Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be propagating some houseplants using the stem, cutting, and water method, which is one of the easiest and most successful method when it comes to propagating houseplants. Now, I am also trying something new using kind of the wet moss and humidity box, so definitely stay until the end of this video when we go through that. But for now, we're going to show you guys a few plants here I've been propagating and rooting in water. I got some neon pothos, some Pilea Peperomioides, some Tradescantia, Hoya Engleriana, string of hearts, Goldfish Vine, and some ficus plants like the Elastica and the Benjamina. So there's many reasons why you want to propagate your houseplants to make more free ones that you can share with your friends, your family, or you can be greedy and keep it all to yourself. It's also a great way to kind of save a dying plant or a plant that may be infested with, thrips or pests that you just can't get rid of. So what you want to do is definitely cut it to try and save that plant, root it in water, and then make a new plant. Hopefully you're doing more of the cutting and sharing than the cutting and dying, but you can pretty much cut and propagate any houseplant that has a stem. So when you look at the structure of a plant, let's see, take a look at this Pilea as an example. This is the stem, this is the petiole, and then this is the leaf that's attached to the petiole that then is attached to the stem. Any stem you guys place in water, that's where mostly the roots are going to come from, as well as that's where the new shoot of a plant will come from as well. Now, the same thing is, for this neon pothos, the vine is considered the stem, this is the petiole, and then the leaf is attached to it. And that goes for most of the plants I'm going to show you guys today. Now, can you root in water just the leaf and the petiole? As an example, this Pilea again. So if you were to just take this leaf and petiole and put it in water, yes, it will root. However, I don't necessarily think it will turn into a plant, and that's because it doesn't have a bit of that stem, as that is sometimes where the new growth is going to happen. So maybe I'm wrong. I've never seen it. I've never experienced it. But if you guys have, definitely comment below and share with the community. All right, so let's propagate and pot some of these plants. Now, let's start with the goldfish vine. So I have been propagating and rooting this guy in water that you guys see here, and literally, I had this plant maybe last year. It was a huge full plant that was vining really nice, trailing really nice, blooms all year long. Unfortunately, it got attacked by mealybugs, and I did not want to go through trying to clean up all the vines as much as I can. So I ended up just finding some pest-free vines. I took cuttings of it and then I placed it in water. I removed obviously a bit of the leaves from the ends to try and create about 2 inches of bare stem with no leaves, and then place this in water. And as you guys can see right now, so much roots, and this guy is so healthy. Look at this crazy root system he's got going on. So this is going to be fairly easy to just plant in soil and make into a new plant. So the soil mix I'm going to use for most of these cuttings is 1/3 of perlite, 1/3 of cacti soil, and 1/3 of potting mix. That's kind of usually my go-to. Sometimes I'll obviously increase more of the potting mix or the cacti soil. It really depends on the plant, but this is kind of a safe bet. So we're going to plant this guy in a 4-inch container that you guys see right here. I already have the soil there, so pretty much I'm just going to make a hole there and stick this guy in there. This vine, the goldfish vines I find really strong, so you guys just have it right there, and then just top it up with soil. So when it comes to the cutting and placing it in water, you guys obviously want to make sure that whenever you're propagating in water, that you top up that water and you don't, because obviously it's going to evaporate and then it's going to flow through the plant. So you want to stay on top of it, make sure that when it does, the water level does go down, you top it up right away. And I often don't need to clean it. It really does depend. And some plants may have a bit of like the algae, so you do want to kind of clean that out. But for the most part, you just place it in a bright area, warm temperature, and roots will start forming. But yeah, so here is our goldfish vine. So that's done. Pretty easy. You got a new full plant right here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to cut a bit more of this. So now we're going to propagate this guy, and let's do that right now actually, because what I think I want to do is I want to start making new ones, and then that way we can plant it back in here and really try and get this to be nice and full. So literally what I did last time is I just pretty much just cut it there. Wasn't looking for a node or anything like that, and I just removed a lot of these leaves at the end to try and get at least about maybe like 1.5 inches to 2 inches of stem that's bare with no leaves, and then just placing these guys in water. And that's what we'll do right now. We'll actually put it with this Hoya Engleriana, which is very similar in terms of what I did. Well, actually, so yeah, there you go. So now let's talk about the Pilea Peperomioides. You guys know it's one of my favorite plants, and I also did a full video on how to care and propagate this, so definitely check it out for more details. But pretty much, you know, you can take one of the babies that you guys either are showing from the soil, where you can easily just pull it out, or if it's attached to the mother plant stem, you can just take scissors and you know, cut it right there, and then again try and get about 2 inches of that stem, you know, that's exposed and free of leaves. If there's any leaves there, just remove it, and then just place this in water, and again make sure that it's in a nice bright area, and within a few weeks roots will start showing. And actually you can really plant this directly into soil. I've seen it before, but I like to do it in water first, just to make sure there's roots before transplanting this into soil. So that is what we're going to do here. There's a bit of roots there, and again we're going to use 4-inch container, the same soil mix. And all the plants, or all the Pileas I propagated before, I actually gave it to all my friends. I don't have a baby one right now, so I'm hoping this guy will be that one that we can grow into a big plant similar to the one I have over there. So when it comes to Pilea Peperomioides, you know, they prefer a lot of bright indirect light, so I'm definitely going to place this guy near my south facing window. And yeah, after potting it in soil, you know, water this thoroughly. Make sure that water drains through. And for the most part, these guys are so used to being in water for a while, so that additional moisture and water, you know, they don't mind that. But eventually, as the plant gets used to the soil, then you obviously want to go back to kind of your regular watering when it comes to the plant that's potted in soil. So there's our Pilea. So now we have 2 new plants. All right, so now let's do the Hoya Engleriana. So this guy, what we're actually going to do is we're going to plant this guy back into the mother plant. And what happened with this one is, I remember when I was repotting this Hoya Engleriana, that the mother plant, this actually broke off. So what I did is I just removed some of the leaves at the end, similar to what we did with that Goldfish Vine, stuck this in water, and eventually there's roots showing up there. So what I want to do with this one is, because the mother plant only has about like 4 vines, is I want to just plant this back into it, so that way we can create kind of more and make this guy a little bit more full. So normally what I like to do is, you know, there's a lot of soil with this one. I'm just gonna try and make a hole there, close to where the mother plant is, and stick this guy in, and yeah, pretty much there. And then top it up, leave some soil there. I'm not gonna top up the soil because, like I said, it's pretty full. So that's pretty much it. So I did take a few, I actually did cut this earlier. So what I did is I cut it, and then I removed some of the leaves, and then I placed it back into water. So we got a few more that's going to root. And in a few weeks, once the root's there, I'm gonna plant it back in here. And then again, our goal with this one is to try and get this to look nice and full. These guys grow really fast, right? So that is your Hoya Engleriana right there. Now let's talk about Tradescantia. So Tradescantia, another easy trailing type of plant. So when it comes to Tradescantia, what's interesting about it is, when I actually cut this, I wasn't looking for a node specifically, but the way where the roots are going to come from is where this line is that you guys see right there, which is just below this leaf. And so if you guys can see, there's a line right there below that leaf, then you got the stem, and then a new leaf, and then there's another line right there. So that is where the roots are going to come from. So when I cut this, I actually wasn't looking for that, and eventually what it did here is there's a line right there, and that's, you know, I cut in between the stem there, and that's where the roots started to show, right? So again, you know, the roots here are now about 2 inches long, which is typically the length of roots I like it to be before I usually plant this in soil, only because I want to give it the best shot it can to obviously succeed and turn into a plant. So we got our soil mix, 4-inch container, and I'm just gonna make a hole there, making sure all those roots are, you know, nice and you know, underneath that soil, and then just obviously topping it up. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Water this guy again, making sure that water drains through, and you got yourself a new Tradescantia plant. Pretty easy. All right, so next one, let's do the Pothos. All right guys, so here is our neon Pothos, and again, I also did a very detailed how to care and how to propagate your Pothos a while back, so definitely check that out. So you know, you cut to make sure that you have that node and that aerial root exposed. That is where the roots are gonna come from, and you place this guy in water, bright area, warm temperature, and honestly in a few weeks, the roots are gonna start showing up pretty fast when it comes to roots growing from Pothos. I mean, Pothos are so easy. And what we're going to do with this one is, we're not going to plant this into its own container. I'm actually going to add it to the mother plant that you guys see right here, and that's because I want this crown at the top to be really full while it's trailing really nicely here. So that is what we're gonna do right now. Is I'm just going to, you guys can see right there, a lot of soil already with this one. So I'm just going to gently, you know, make a nice hole there, enough for the roots to be in there as well as a bit of that stem, and then just, yeah, simple as that. I don't think I'm gonna top it up. Maybe we'll top it up with a bit of soil just to make sure all those roots are covered. And there you guys have it. So pretty easy. Man, honestly, pothos are one of the easiest houseplants not only to care for but to propagate as well. Highly recommend beginners, especially when it comes to propagating, is to start off with a pothos. Really easy. Once you kind of figure that out and you know have a lot of success with it, you can pretty much, you know, cut and propagate any plants that has stems or vines. But yeah, so now let's talk about the Ficus Elastica. So also did a very detailed video on how to cut and propagate your Ficus Elasticas, and what we have here is obviously a cutting, and this is the stem, this is the petiole, and there's the leaf, and you guys can see roots are growing pretty much in all direction of that stem because I have this guy submerged in water. And yeah, and really when it comes to just planting this in soil, again, waiting for that root to be at least 1.5 inches to 2 inches. This should be okay because I find that the Ficus Elastica is quite resilient, but you pretty much just plant it into soil, water it thoroughly, make sure that water drains through, place it in an area that gets a lot of bright indirect light. I have mine in a south facing window, and in a few weeks it's going to turn into a new whole plant. So pretty much this was that original leaf, and then this tiny leaf was the first leaf that grew out of it, and then this one, and then this one, and so on, and eventually it now has its own full stem growing out of it as well. So pretty easy, really fun to propagate Ficus Elasticas. I think so anyway. It is one of my favorite houseplants. Now I also started to propagate some Ficus benjamina, and you guys can see right here that this is obviously a cutting that I just, you know, cut from anywhere as long as there was a stem, and you know, there's obviously stem right here, and you can see a bit of the roots starting to show. Not as much yet, so obviously this isn't ready to be planted into soil right away, but we're just gonna leave this in water again and allow for that root to grow at least about 1.5 inches to 2 inches before planting this in soil. But again, you know, fairly easy. You don't have to look for a node when it comes to these types of plants. Just cut and make sure that there's a bit of that stem that's bare, and then make sure that that is underneath, you know, submerged in water. Some of the common questions I get when it comes to cutting and propagating your plant is what happens to the mother plant when you cut it, right? So let's take a look at this neon pothos that obviously I cut this one and propagated about last month. Let's see if we can find where that vine that we originally cut, right here. So what happens to most plants, and this goes for your monstera, your string of hearts, these goldfish vine, is they need to continue to grow, right? So this is where I originally made that cut. And what it did was obviously pushed out this new vine, trailing now on this side, and it pushed out this vine as well. So that's one thing that's cool about plants, is you think, you know, you're hurting them by cutting them, but honestly, sometimes cutting them or pruning them actually promotes new growth. So that's another way, you know, to obviously, you know, try and get your plant to be lush and full. Same thing with the string of hearts, which is what we're gonna do right now, is how to cut and propagate this. I also did a very detailed video on how to do that, so definitely check it out. But we never covered how to propagate using the tubers, which is what we're gonna show you guys right now. So a quick run through of how to cut and propagate your string of hearts. So pretty much you take a string, let's just take one right now as an example right here, and you know, these two hearts right there, you snip those off and you create a node, which is where that root is going to show. So that is, you know, sometimes you'll have like a tiny little ball there already, but pretty much that is your node, and you stick that in water and place it in an area that gets a lot of bright light, and in a few weeks roots will grow out of that, just like what we have here, which is the you know, regular string of hearts that you guys can see. And already these roots are about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, so definitely ready to be planted back into soil. And you know, I have here also the variegated kind. Unfortunately, the roots here are still fairly small, that you guys can see there. And yeah, so we need to obviously wait till this guy's a bit longer. Surprisingly, I actually cut this guy and had it in water longer than this one, but this is taking a little bit longer to grow and some roots. So I do find that with the variegated string of hearts, it does take usually longer, but we're still gonna, we're gonna place this back in water and leave it here for a few more weeks until it's ready. But for now we have this guy. So I think what I want to do with this one is plant it into a new pot. I was going to mix it with the other string of hearts that I have here, but I think what we'll do is I want to show you guys, I think we'll plant the tubers here and I'll show you guys how to do that. So for now we're going to pot this guy into our medium mix. With the string of hearts though, I probably would add a bit more perlite and cacti soil, only because these guys really are more semi-succulent and they like a bit more drainage. So just place it here and then just top it up with soil. So normally when it comes to a new plant with a string of hearts, what I like to do is I don't like to top the soil up all the way to the top, and I like to leave a bit of room. And the reason for it is because when I have more cuttings, the way I'm gonna add it, that way I don't have to go, stick my finger in there and try and mess with the roots, is there's enough space there for me to just place the new cuttings there and then top it up with soil. So that is pretty much what I'm just gonna do right there. That is why I'm gonna leave a bit of that space. And yeah, water this guy thoroughly and you got yourself a new string of hearts. So now let's talk about tubers. These balls that you guys see there, that's a tuber right there, and that's a small tuber right there. And we're actually going to cut a bit of this guy right here at the bottom because he's got a whole bunch of tubers. And I'll show you. Let me just cut this guy, hold on. We got a whole bunch of cuttings that we're gonna have to propagate a lot of these strings using creating that node. But here, we have a lot of tubers. So we got one right here, two right there, three right there, four. Lots and lots of tubers. All right, so there's two methods when it comes to propagating tubers. One, if this was still attached to the mother plant. So imagine this is, still attached to the mother plant, and this is your pot, and you place it just like that. And pretty much, again, it's attached to the mother plant, and then what's gonna happen is it's gonna root, and then it's gonna shoot out new shoots, and then once it starts doing that, then you can snip it off and detach it from the mother plant, right? So that is one of the faster way to get these guys to root and start growing. I don't like to have it attached to the mother plant. I just literally, cut these guys like this, and when I'm planting it into soil, I do maybe about 2/3 of it, leaving the tubers a bit exposed at the top. And the reason for it is because I can then see if that tuber is either dehydrated or mushy. So dehydrated is obviously you're underwatering, mushy is you're overwatering, and it's also an easier way for me to just lift it up and see if there's roots growing from it, as well as if there's shoot that's starting to come out of it. So that is definitely an easy way when it comes to propagating your string of hearts, especially if you have a lot of tubers. So exactly what happened with this plant that I did, you guys can see right here. As you can see right there, there's a lot of these growth that's showing right now, and yeah, you guys can see that there's tubers right there. So this is all growing. So that is definitely one of the ways to propagate your string of hearts. Now, can you put a tuber in water? You could, but odds are it's gonna rot, because I've done it once and I'll never do it again, because the only time I've done it, it rotted. And I think most of the people who have experienced it also have experienced rotting. So I just prefer to put them directly into soil and water this guy lightly, and yeah, this is gonna grow. So I've got a whole bunch of more tubers here. I think what I might want to do is actually might want to just plant this guy to the mother plant. That way the top can be full as well. People ask if you should detach the string that's on it. You don't have to. I just like to leave it on there, because again, it allows the leaves to transfer a bit of the sun through that root, through the tuber, so that way it can help generate a lot of that roots. And yeah, so that is pretty easy. So there you guys have it. That is how you propagate tubers. So really easy when it comes to doing the cutting and water propagation of many houseplants. Don't be afraid to try it with any of your other houseplants that has a stem. I'm gonna do it again with my jasmine plant. I haven't done that one in a while, because it's really fun to kind of just experience and learn and experiment and see what happens. So don't be afraid to do it. But speaking of experiment, I am trying something new when it comes to propagating. I'm using more of the wet moss and humidity box. So let me go ahead and get that box and I'll show you guys how that's progressing. Alright guys, so here is my little humidity box, and literally this is just a plastic box that I got, you know, when I get some vegetables. I think this was spinach that you get at the grocery store. And really what I did here is I put a layer of wet moss, and then I put some cuttings in here. And so what I have in here is this Monstera dubii that was really taking a long time to root. So I just place it down, you know, with the aerial roots face down. That way it's touching the wet moss. And this was in water for like almost a month, and it was showing no roots. And look at the roots all of a sudden. So there's one there, and there's a tiny one there, and it's just crazy how fast this rooted. So I have that in there, as well as I have here my silver sword that I started to place in here just yesterday, because this was the one that's dying and I'm trying to save it right now, and I just did not want to try and risk it in water because, you know, I just don't think it was gonna go well. So let me try this method right now. But yeah, so again, like I know a lot of people have done this method and it's been successful for them. Personally for me, I'm new to it, so I'm learning, and so far with the Monstera dubii it's working. But like I said, this is one thing when it comes to, you know, caring for your plants or propagating your plants is, you know, don't be afraid to try it and try something new and see what happens. But yeah, other than that, hopefully you enjoyed this video and learned something new. I now have some new plants. I feel like I just came from a store. I got some new Pilea, some string of hearts, some Goldfish Vine, and hopefully this you know, Monstera dubii and you know, my silver sword ends up rooting really well, and we can make it into a new plant. Other than that, we'll see you guys on the next one. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay safe. Peace.